Greetings from Indianapolis. Our guest today is Dusty Harrison. While he was in college at the University of North Carolina, Dusty hit a point where he knew something in his life needed to change. One day, walking across campus, he noticed a table with a banner that asked, "Can you be Greek and a Christian?" That question would set Dusty on a new path that he's still on today. I'm Win Smiley, and this is the ATO Show. So, Dusty, you grew up in a household, a family where faith was important, and yet based on when you went to college, you thought that it was sort of a zero-sum game as it relates to either join the fraternity system and turn your back on your faith, or just the opposite. How did you come to that conclusion before even stepping on campus?
I did, Win. Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in North Carolina, in the Bible Belt, where a lot of people, there's a church on every corner. And yeah, so that was a part of my upbringing. I would have said that it was something that was important to me coming into school at UNC. But I had actually, like a lot of my friends, playing sports and kind of getting in with the popular crowd, if you will, in high school. I had tasted a little bit of the kind of party scene in high school, and almost tasted the two different lives of you've got your Friday night and Saturday night, and then your Sunday morning and Wednesday night church. So coming to college was a continuation of that for me in a way, where it felt like a fork in the road, where I'm either going to choose to have fun in college or I'm going to grow in my faith. I didn't know a lot about fraternities, but I came in and I looked at playing some football at smaller schools, didn't work out. And so I was used to being a part of a team, looking for community. I was now a small fish in a big ocean at UNC. So I was looking for that community and ended up checking out ATO.
Why ATO? What drew you to ATO?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about fraternities coming in, so I wasn't actively seeking to rush. But I had some guys from high school reach out to me pretty much day one of move-in. And these were respectable guys from high school. We had a Moorhead Scholar which is full ride at UNC. So they invited me out to a first rush event, night one of being at Carolina. And these were guys that I knew and respected from home. So I said, hey, if they think this is legit, I'll give it a shot. And I did. I jumped right into the whole rush scene, and these were work hard, play hard guys. They showed me a good time. And again, I had tasted some of that in high school, so I jumped right in.
So then how long as you're on this trajectory of sort of partying hard, working hard, partying hard trajectory, that you realize, you know what, not the trajectory that is working out for me? What happened?
Yeah, it took a little while for me, Win. I'm the kind of guy, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it 100%. So like I said, I grew up with a faith background. I got to that fork in the road, pledged ATO fall of freshman year. And there was never one moment where I, consciously decided to put my faith on the back burner, but it was a series of choices along the way where I was all into the ATO and the fraternity experience. And like I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%. So you fast forward to about halfway through my sophomore year, and on the surface, I was the stereotypical fraternity guy, in probably all the wrong ways. But the parties, the girls, all of it, I was still keeping grades up and such. But yeah, on the surface, it may have looked great, but on the inside, my life was really starting to crumble. The partying was starting to get a little bit old. My parents, we were just personal things going on in life. My parents were divorcing. We had some deaths in the family, and I had a bad breakup in a dating relationship at the time. So it ended up made the bad choice to drink and to drive one night sophomore year, and got pulled over for a DUI. Thank God and no one else was hurt, but that was definitely a rock bottom and a wake-up call for me.
So then you're walking on campus at one point and you see a sign or something get your attention in which asks, can you be Christian and can you have faith and be a part of a fraternity? And that sparked your interest in maybe there was a way out of what you were dealing with?
That's right. Yeah, so around the time of that DUI, after that, I did a lot of soul searching. Right, I was thinking about, can I stay active in ATO? I wanted to, but obviously it wasn't all the fraternity's fault. I take responsibility for myself, but I think about where I ended up. I knew something had to change, so I was thinking about dropping the fraternity or transferring schools. And people ask me how I got involved with Greek InterVarsity, and you said it. I was walking through campus. I passed by that sign that says, can you be Greek and Christian? And, it's the Bible Belt. A lot of people, will identify themselves as Christians. But the idea of actually having a relationship with God, of following Jesus as I understood it in a fraternity context, was just so far-fetched that it was intriguing to me. So I go up and I talk to a guy who's staffing this table, and I fill out a contact card. Still not fully bought in, but I was curious enough to express some interest. And so they followed up with me, and long story, but ended up getting connected with the Greek IV staff, who became a mentor to me and helped kind of show me a way forward.
So describe the rest of your college life, because if I'm listening to this and not familiar with Greek InterVarsity, and I had fun in my college career, I would be thinking, well, then, Dusty said, I'm turning my back on all the crazy. And so now I'm like almost, sort of in a priest kind of situation where I'm not doing anything, right?
Right.
Describe what the reality was of recommitting your faith, but still being a part of the fraternity chapter.
Yeah, that's right. So for me, it felt like another fork in the road as I was starting to get involved with Greek InterVarsity. And, for me, that looked like mostly just getting together with a guy that was on staff with Greek IV at the time. He had been in a fraternity. He was a Christian. And so as I shared stories with him about some of the struggles I was dealing with, I didn't experience some of the same judgment that I had experienced, or at least perceived, from other Christian organizations. So he extended me grace in a way that allowed me some space to kind of explore what it meant to actually have a relationship with Jesus that was relevant to my college and fraternity experience. So I did it. At first, as I recommitted my life to following Jesus, my first reaction was, I think I may need to get out of the fraternity because of all the stereotypes. But he always just encouraged me to pray and to maybe consider the opportunity that I now had to learn to live out my faith in an environment that may be challenging, but could also be really rewarding. I lived in the fraternity house at UNC for 3 years. So long story, I did decide to stay active in the fraternity, and the second half of college definitely looked different than the first. But it wasn't like I just checked out and lived in a Christian bubble, within ATO. I was still very much active in the fraternity. I did start a Bible study. That was something that we didn't have at the time. So you've heard me say, to this day, standing up in the chapter room and announcing that we were going to start a chapter Bible study is maybe one of the most intimidating things I've ever done. But looking back, it's also one of the most rewarding. And I think it did make a difference in the fraternity too.
Yeah, because you had some takers in that, right? So some people showed up and wanted to join you in that.
Absolutely. And I mean, to be clear, I had plenty of brothers who were skeptical and gave me some crap about it at first, because I think, to your point, if somebody stands up in the fraternity and announces a Bible study, I think they do have that like priest, wait, what's going on? Because they knew me one way the first half of college, and now I'm standing up talking about a Bible study. So it probably was confusing. But for me, even in announcing the Bible study, I tried to be clear that this wasn't me standing up on some sort of high horse and pretending to have it all together. And, I just wanted to be able to create space for us to actually talk about real things, where I wasn't going to be judging them and people could come as they are. I didn't claim to have every answer, but like I had the opportunity to explore and grow in my faith, wanted to be able to present that to the guys that were closest to me in college too.
Yeah, and I think, when I hear stories like this, and there are lots of stories like this, the ones that do not work are the guys that stand up and think that they are going to basically evangelize the entire chapter and sort of show everybody by their actions that they've got all the right answers, and that the other guys in the chapter that don't follow them are just totally out of it and don't deserve to be connected. Obviously, that does not work so well
It doesn't.
in a fraternity chapter. So, based on what you just said, that was not your approach. And so you had guys that connected with you, but I'm guessing that the entire chapter continued to have a positive influence on you, whether it was conversations about faith or not.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, I actually was an outlier where most of our guys would maybe live in our fraternity house for a year, maybe 2 years. But honestly, partly because of the convenience of living in the house and having the chef and the meal plan, but it was also an intentional faith decision for me to live in the house through my senior year, to show these guys that, I wanted to stay active in the fraternity. I cared about the brotherhood. So I was around. So at first, it was a struggle, like kind of early on, sophomore, junior year of learning how to be because the fraternity didn't change overnight. So learning how to be in an environment where there's constant kind of temptation and peer pressure all around you. So at times it was messy and I kind of slipped back into old patterns. At other times, maybe unintentionally, I think I did maybe remove myself too much from guys. And, I would try to invite them to Bible study, but, they would sometimes gently, sometimes not so gently point out that I had kind of lost touch with them just as friends. So it was learning to kind of live out that balance. But absolutely, it made a huge difference with the Bible study. Senior year, I was philanthropy chair, planned a golf tournament, and tried to stay as active as I could be.
So when you look back now at some of those guys that joined your Bible study, because you stood up and said, hey, I'm going to start this thing, do you still have connections with some of those guys whose own trajectories changed because of your willingness to stand up and say, I'm going to do this?
I do. Yeah, life happens. Hard to believe that was 20 years ago almost, but keep in touch. We've had some fraternity reunions and, of course, the weddings and different life stages. In college and then immediately after, I had one pledge brother who had gone through a lot. He was a cancer survivor, and he got involved in the Bible study and with Greek IV, and I didn't really grow up with much of a faith background, but through that involvement in our conversations, really committed to wanting to explore and grow in his faith. On the flip side of that, I have plenty of relationship with brothers who they may not identify with as being a Christian themselves, but we've had a lot of interesting and respectful conversations over the years. And honestly, those are still some of my favorite. Man, I've got a good friend and fraternity brother who, whenever I'm passing through town, we'll get together, and inevitably conversations will naturally come up about faith, and he'll ask me questions and we'll get into a respectful debate of sorts. But he always says, Dusty, I appreciate that you've created space for this in the fraternity and that we have that kind of friendship where even if we disagree, we can talk about things that actually matter.
Right. And I think that that's a great way to describe sort of what I think sort of ATO tries to communicate to not only our own members, but to the public in general. Yeah, we're the first Christian-based fraternity based on Christian principles, and those are our principles, and they are our foundation principles, and we can't change them, don't want to change them, but we're welcome to any men of faith, no faith at all, other faiths. That's not really the issue, but certainly to be able to talk about these kinds of issues is absolutely one of the things that I think fraternity membership, especially at the undergraduate level, should, this is part of a conversation along with a whole lot of others that people should feel comfortable having. Whether they agree with it or not, they can certainly point out their own point of view and and have discussions without being disagreeable. So I just think fraternity and ATO is set up just because of our founding principles as perhaps more of a permission, more of a catalyst to be able to do that. So I think how you described it is really important. I think a lot of men from the time you were an undergraduate, before you were an undergraduate, all the way through today are having those conversations in ATO chapters across the country.
Absolutely. And it's like, if we can't talk about it in the fraternity, where can we talk about it, right? So yeah, sophomore year for me, starting the Bible study, I just realized I had joined the fraternity to experience community and brotherhood, right? Like a lot of people do. But halfway through my college experience, I realized the only things we ever talked about were girls and Carolina sports and who got drunk and did something stupid. It was just all on the surface. So I think starting the Bible study was for sure a place for people who already had a faith background to come and to grow. But absolutely for us to just come regardless of your background and get below the surface and talk about things that matter, like you said.
All right. So the decision you made to go back to your faith really not only put you on a different trajectory in college, but it defined to date your professional career. So tell us about the transition from college into a profession that I'm sure when you were a freshman going into college was not even close to being on your radar.
Not even close. Not even close. Yeah, that was a journey and a story in itself. But in a nutshell, I would say I had such a positive experience with Greek InterVarsity, learning to live out my faith in a fraternity context and being mentored by staff and growing in community, not only with my own fraternity brothers, but with peers in other Greek organizations that I left college or approached graduation wanting more of that, thinking about the difference that it made in my life and then knowing that there's a need for this on campuses across the country. So yeah, I committed to a year. I didn't come in thinking this would be a 20-year plan. So I did a one-year internship with Greek InterVarsity just to try it out up in Williamsburg, Virginia, and again, had a great experience. And that eventually led me down to here in Clemson, South Carolina, where we started a new Greek InterVarsity chapter back in 2007. And we've been here ever since.
And you went from being responsible for a campus to regional responsibilities, and recently just named as the Associate Director of Discipleship for all of Greek InterVarsity. Talk about that position a little bit. What's that entail, and what are you experiencing, or what will you experience through that, do you think?
Yeah, so this is brand new, hot off the press. Excited to take on this role. So we won't move. We will stay here in the Clemson area. Will be connected still to the ATO chapter here and to the Greek IV chapter here. But honestly, this role came about, I would say, through my personal experience of mentorship and discipleship, both on the student side and the staff side over the past 20 years, and just recognizing the huge need and opportunity for mentorship and discipleship. So just creating space for students and even for our young staff to continue to grow and to develop in their faith. So for me, this role will take effect this summer, and it's going to be a continuation of some of what I'm already doing now in the regional role of supervising and helping to develop our staff team, but also connecting directly with students, both at Clemson and in the Carolinas. But, over the past few years with COVID, we've had the opportunity, really the necessity to connect with students more remotely and virtually. So we're going to be trying to build out a platform to help us to reach students on more campuses that are looking for something like this, maybe if they don't even realize it. So digital platforms, content, and then having some capacity both for myself and a team to be mentors to students who are looking for something like this.
So for a lot of years, probably the last, 25 years, when you looked at surveys of young people in particular, people, high school, 20s, 30s, the number of people leaving church or not even considering church was on the rise, right? So it was nun affiliation. So when people are asked what religion, the growing check mark was none of the above, right? Called the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. Recently, that has leveled off and is starting to go a little bit the other way. In other words, what I'm reading anyway, is that high school boys in particular, but not exclusively boys, girls too, but young college men, more so than young college women, but not exclusively college men, are going back to some faith tradition that has structure. That's one of the explanations, that they're looking for structure and that they're looking for what they would say is truth that they could really rely on. So you've talked to generations now of people and where they are in their personal lives and whether they want to explore their faith or not. I'm curious, what are you hearing and seeing sort of the same indications, and what have your conversations been like? Have they changed in the past couple of years?
I am. Yeah, those are great observations. And for anybody who's done or read any of the research on Gen Z, and I know the generations are shifting, these are digital natives, meaning these students have never known a world without smartphones and social media. There's benefits to that, but there's challenges as well. They've been labeled fairly or unfairly as the anxious generation, and the mental health crisis is real. I think that has been a problem for years, but certainly magnified over the past few years. The anxiety and the depression, the tragedy of, I would say, being the most connected generation in some ways digitally, but also the loneliest generation. So there are some barriers. On top of that, you think about, I think there is maybe a general distrust for some, of organized religion and, some of the headlines and things that they may see. All that said, to your point, if you can build trust and connection with these students and just kind of meet them at their level and really sit down with them and hear from them, absolutely. We see these students are hungry for truth. They're hungry for experiences that are real and that actually make a difference in their life and in the world. Whether they can articulate it or not, I think they're hungry for God and, like you said, for truth.
Do you think that it is all because of the digital component, the smartphone, or are there other factors in their lives that are different, that they are reaching out for something that a generation ago that people wouldn't have been reaching out for at their age?
Yeah, that's a good question. I certainly think the digital, the smartphones is a factor, but certainly not the only factor going on there. Actually sat in some training recently that was talking about Gen Z, this generation of students, and just acknowledging all the things that this generation has gone through. And I think any generation can look back and now look at current generations and maybe speak disparagingly. And yet, if you think about even just the past 5 or so years, certainly COVID affected us all. But this generation of college students and the massive disruption that was to their educational experience and just the uncertainty. Somebody pointed out with the digital news and how everything is just so immediately available, mass school shootings and all of the things going on in society, I think creates a sense of maybe some fear and anxiety and, am I safe, looking for security. So that's another factor, ultimately looking for truth and for security and identity. So there's lots of things going on that you don't immediately necessarily get to, but sitting down and these kind of mentorship relationships with students, you can really get to the heart of it. And it's absolutely there.
How have the conversations changed from a conversation you would have had with an undergraduate young man 15 years ago versus a conversation you have today with an undergraduate young man?
Yeah. In some ways, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So, I mean, on top of all of the things we're talking about, there's the stereotypical college pressures academically and socially. So in some sense, the conversations are similar, and it's humbling to me that some of the stories that I can still share with students seem to still connect about this idea of being in the fraternity and trying to balance faith and living with a set of faith and morals and still being relevant and relational and having a good time. So yeah, in some sense they haven't, but I do think we're maybe at a different starting point in a lot of these conversations, even here in the Bible Belt. You said it, that less and less students have much of a church or faith background. There are certainly still some who do, but coming in and we sit down for Bible studies or spiritual conversations, some of these students have never heard any of these things before, and there's a genuine curiosity and just an intrigue to want to know more. Whereas previously, at least here in the South, there can be, I've been there, done that, I've heard that. So there's a curiosity that I find refreshing.
Yeah, and so in addition to your work with Greek InterVarsity, you're also serving on the board of trustees for the Clemson chapter. So you've had not only the IV experience that you're working with several college organizations, Greek organizations, but also specifically ATO. So I'm curious, what do you see different, just in general as the chapter, not necessarily even from a faith-based perspective, but sort of the chapter makeup 15 years ago versus how a chapter's culture is looking today?
Yeah. Yeah, again, there are some similarities, but when I first moved to Clemson, ATO was a natural first point of contact for me, and they were looking for a chapter advisor, and I jumped right in. It's been a joy to get to know these guys and to be involved in the chapter over the past 20 years, and it has changed and grown. They were just coming back on campus at the time, back 07, 08, and now they've grown both in number and just presence on campus. You were just down here a few weeks ago, so you see the presence these guys have involved in so many things on campus. Bible study is actually a really strong foundational. It's not just a side tangential thing that they offer. These guys, it's become so ingrained in their culture, the Bible study, that they have 50, 60 guys that are coming out on a regular basis to these Bible studies. And these are guys, some with a church and a faith background, others no faith background at all, but it's become almost like a weekly brotherhood event where they're coming together and they're talking about real things in their lives. And I would say that's only enhanced the sense of brotherhood that they have. I mean, they go out and they have their fair share of fun like any fraternity, but there's a depth of relationship, I think, and a respect for one another. I think that the Bible study and the leadership has a good deal to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know if you even have paid attention to this or keep track of it at all, but so that large Bible study has been going on for a few years now. I'm curious, do you keep track of or stay in touch with the young alumni who leave that? And was that, how much of an impact did that have, do you think, on the spiritual level of individuals? So when they graduate and perhaps they're obviously not part of that Bible study anymore, that was just sort of a cool thing to do when they did it because everyone else was doing it, and it doesn't really have much of an impact on their lives. Or as you continue to keep in touch with some of these guys, do you see a real impact that had thanks to their decision to be a part of that group as an undergraduate?
Yeah, for a lot of them, it makes a lifelong difference to these guys, probably in more ways than they're thinking about when they just show up to a chapter Bible study because they're offering free food and it's a chance to just hang out with their brothers. But yeah, I keep in touch with a lot of these ATO alumni. We've got 15, 20 years worth now that I have known. And I could tell story after story. There's one in particular that I think I've shared with you of a brother who he was chapter president of the Clemson chapter at the time. And his biological brother was also a member of the Clemson chapter. And he tragically passed away in the summer after his freshman year. And that had a tremendous impact on the chapter, seeing the chapter rally around each other. A lot of the Bible study group and some of the Christians in the fraternity actually really poured into this guy who was the chapter president in a way that he would say was a turning point for his faith. And that's something that he's now pursuing. So it's amazing that God could use, and then the fraternity could actually be a part of something so tragic, actually then changing the course of someone's life and spiritual growth and development. So that's one of many stories of brothers who've actively continued to pursue their faith. I've heard that there's actually a group of some young ATO alums who've just graduated in the past 2 or 3 years that had such a positive experience with the Clemson ATO Bible study that they've got a young adult Bible study that's going on down in Charleston, South Carolina, that I think in large part is because of their experience through ATO.
That's great. So when you sit back and you look at your kids, and when they get to college, you're going to say, okay, check out the Greek system, because I think it'd be really something good for you all to consider. Or are you a little, based on your own experience when you first went to college, are you a little hesitant because after all, they're your kids, right?
Right. Yeah. My wife and I were raising 3 of our own now, and maybe it's a little different when they're young, but our oldest is a freshman in high school, and she's getting curious about college and, even just my role with college students, having interacted with some over the years. So I would say Kristen and I are open. I don't think that Greek life is necessarily for everyone, and certainly the temptations are going to be there. It's one of those things that you can get out of it what you put into it, for better or worse. But because of my experience with ATO and our work with Greek InterVarsity, I think absolutely joining a fraternity or sorority can play a positive role in your faith to help you to continue to grow and develop, but just also help you to grow as a leader and as a person. Staying connected with 15, 20 years worth of alumni, that's part of the beauty of college ministry, is you get to see students graduate and go on to become, leaders in medicine and law and business and, in local churches and just leading their families. So yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility for us that could be beneficial.
So this is an overwhelming question, but I'll ask it anyway. When you look back at your entire ATO experience from the first day you stepped on campus and joined to everything that you're doing now at the Board of Trustees, your InterVarsity engagement, what's the best thing about your connection over the years with ATO, or the best, one of the top things
Sure.
that when you look back that you can personally say, this is great because this is part of my life and it impacted me?
Yeah, that is a big question. I appreciate it. There's so much. We got together with a group of college students last night at Clemson, just celebrating the end of the year, and we were reflecting on just some of the fun memories from the year. So ATO has absolutely provided a lot of just fun memories socially with friends and brothers, both in college and, we had the string of weddings and brothers who are having babies and all of that now. So just the friendships and relationships are definitely a highlight. But for me, for sure, as I've said, I wouldn't have known or anticipated it at the time, but I would say, ATO has given me the gift of learning how to apply my faith in following Jesus in every area of my life. Right. It would have been easy for me sophomore year to just drop the fraternity and to go join another ministry or another church, and that would have been completely viable. By me staying involved in ATO and Greek IB, it was probably messier than it could have been, but I would say, and we say that to students a lot, it's like if you can learn to follow Christ in this environment, you can follow him anywhere in a way, that's not awkward or aggressive or off-putting. It's just learning to, we call it living an uncompartmentalized life. Just if this is a part of your life, then learning to live it out in every area. So I think that's the best gift I've gotten through ATO.
Great. Well, Dusty, thank you for taking the time today. Thank you for your service to ATO, and thank you for investing time in college students, because not everybody is equipped to do that, and certainly not everybody is willing to do that. So very much appreciate your time and your insight and your care for college students across the country.
Yeah, thank you, Wynn. It's an honor to be here, and very much appreciate you and your leadership.